Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, President Rodrigo Duterte defends his decision to back out from his debate challenge to retired Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio over the West Philippine Sea. And later, following Sinopharm's inclusion in the World Health Organization's emergency use listing, the Health Department mulls to apply for the emergency use approval of the Chinese vaccine. And questions hound regulators after they issued a certificate of product registration for the human use of the anti-parasitic drug ivermectin. Food and Drug Administration Director General Domingo joins us live. President Rodrigo Duterte clarifies he's not scared to debate with retired Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio. Mr. Duterte explains that whatever he says in the debate could become government policy. The chief executive challenged Carpio last week over the West Philippine Sea issue. Here's the president in his own words.
Ang problema lang kasi dito is nakalimutan ko na si Carpio ang hindi ang presidente, ako. So, policy statement kung anong itanong niya, masasabi ko, and I might bind future actions of government pagdating dito sa West Philippine Sea. Pero doon ako sa kahon. It's not because I'm afraid of debates. Ilang debate na dinaanan ko nung eleksyon. Araw-araw halos. Takot ako. Ano yung utak niya? May pareho kami abogado. Hello. Hindi lang inis, galit. Mga kung ano ginagawa. Using me as an excuse to right the wrong.
In other news, the Food and Drug Administration has now given emergency use authorization to 7 vaccine manufacturers. These are Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Sinovac, Sputnik V, Janssen, Covaxin, and Moderna. The Health Department is also seeking emergency approval for China's Sinopharm vaccines. Meantime, the FDA has approved a company's application to register ivermectin for human use as an anti-nematode drug, despite controversies hounding the product. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Food and Drug Administration Chief Domingo. Director General Domingo, welcome to the source, sir, and thank you again for your time.
Hi, good morning, Pinky. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with ivermectin muna, DG. So does the DOH and the FDA still stand by its earlier pronouncements and statements that you do not recommend ivermectin for either the prevention or treatment of COVID-19?
Yes, no, that's correct, Pinky. No, ivermectin is an investigational drug. It's now being investigated, for its use against COVID-19, including here sa DOST, PCHRD. They're going to start clinical trials soon. However, at this time, there's not enough data for us to be able to recommend it as a treatment against COVID-19. But it is a well-known drug. It is known and, of course, now registered in the Philippines in oral human form, but as an anti-parasitic drug.
Okay, so hindi pa rin siya gamot to prevent or treat COVID-19. And again, of course, clinical trials will commence soon. Kailan ho ito? I know it was supposed to be in May and then I think it was moved to June.
Yeah, I think the researchers, the investigators from UP, NIH are finalizing the clinical trial protocol now, and they would probably start recruiting patients into the trial in June, and hopefully in maybe 4 to 5 months they're going to come up with the final results and see so that we can see.
And then doon ho kayo magkakaroon ng more sound decision indeed kung papayagan po ang ivermectin for use for COVID.
Yes, no, kasi every drug, Pinky, when you register it for a certain indication. And you can register it for the indication that it has already been proven to work and at what dosage that drug is used. So if, for example, the clinical trial does show that it has a positive effect, then they can expand the indications of the medicine for COVID-19. Of course, if it doesn't, then it will stay as an anti-parasitic drug.
And here's the thing. Very recently, the FDA granted a pharmaceutical company, I believe it's Lloyd Pharmaceutical Company, a certificate of product registration for ivermectin for use on nematodes, no? I hope I pronounced that right. Or, in other words, worms.
Yes, nematodes are like intestinal worms, intestinal parasites. Like I said before, ivermectin has always been a registrable product in the Philippines. Pwede naman talagang i-register yan as an anti-parasitic, but nobody has registered the human form in the last maybe 20, 30 years. And most of the ivermectin that the DOH has been using has been donated by foreign groups like the WHO or UNICEF or Medicine Without Borders. So walang nagko-commercially available dito unlike in other countries. But now that a manufacturer has come forward and registered the product and they've proven naman that this is a company with proven good manufacturing practice and proven stability of the tablet form for at least 6 months, then we granted the certificate of product registration.
Just for you as Director General of the FDA, why all of a sudden, after all these years, a pharmaceutical company registers ivermectin as an anti-parasitic drug, human grade at that, because ang pinapayagan lang ho talaga yung animal grade, in the midst of all this push by some sectors to use ivermectin?
Well, I guess it's because there is a market. No? I mean, if you look at even the internet, may mga huhulihin kami sa Lazada or sa whatever platform, tatanggalin, tapos the next day magbebenta naman. I mean, we can't deny, people are taking it and people are taking, maybe some of them are taking veterinary products, some of them are buying unregistered products from illicit suppliers na sinusubukan natin, dami nating nahuli sa customs at saka ng mga police. Pero may mga sumusulpot pa rin, no? And since there is a demand for it, well, at least in a way, I'm happy that at least one responsible manufacturer will come up with a product that will be available to the public. At least alam natin na pangtao talaga siya, at saka alam natin na may quality. And if there's any problem, we'll be able to trace the product exactly where it came from.
So it's as if it's an authentic product, hindi siya yung magtataka kayo sa nanggaling yung produkto na binibenta kasi nga it comes from a pharmaceutical company. So let's move on to this point now. Because of the push, or people are encouraged, some are saying, what's wrong if I take ivermectin? Now that this pharmaceutical company has been granted the certificate of product registration, it will now be readily available commercially, DG?
Yes, no, but it is a prescription drug. So a doctor has to prescribe it to you. Yes, kailangan may reseta. Kailangan i-explain sa iyo ng doktor kung ano yung gamot na nireseta sa iyo, kung anong effect ito and why it is being given to you. So it's not an over-the-counter drug like most antibiotics, antibiotics, antimicrobials, antivirals. So lahat naman ng mga ganitong gamot talaga mga prescription drug ang classification.
So it's almost as if I'm reminded of what happened in Quezon City that number one, these individuals needed a valid prescription. That's number one. And then second, it must be coming from it must be compounded by a company. So basically, ganun pa rin pala ito, pero magiging available na sa mga drugstore.
Yes, at mahahanap natin, matitrace natin siya. No? Merong manufacturer responsible for the product, meron din naman doktor na responsible for prescribing the product, at magkakaroon ng butika responsible for handling the product properly.
But this allows people now to freely buy and use ivermectin as a treatment, not as an anti-parasitic drug, Kasi hindi, hindi naman po nila ginagamit yan before. Pero talagang pwede na hong bumili yung mga tao ngayon dahil naniniwala silang prophylaxis o kaya magtatago sila for emergency use as long as may prescription sila. And it might not, no, DG, it might not be hard for some people to get a prescription.
Well, yes, the responsibility lies in the doctor. No? The doctor, of course, has the right, no, I mean, to prescribe medicine to his patients. And of course, it has to be done with a lot of logic and of course a lot of experience and a lot of reading and knowing about your patient and after examining your patient. And when the doctor prescribes it, then like I said, you have to divulge completely to the patient what you're giving them and why you're giving it for, what you're giving it for, and what are the possible effects of a medicine is on the body of the person.
But it becomes almost, no, DG, like an off-label drug. Ano po? I mean, a doctor can actually prescribe it to me and say it's for worms. Ano po? But really, my motivation for buying it is for my protection or my possible treatment. Ginagamit nga siya po. Di ba maraming mga gamot na ginagamit na parang off-label po yung dating nila.
Yes, no, that's exactly what it is, Pinky. If you're, for example, prescribing an antibiotic for something else. Now, I mean, for example, we know people who got COVID and they've been prescribed azithromycin. Azithromycin is an antibacterial, it's an antiviral. So that's off-label use, no, of a product. So kailangan sasabihin mo sa pasyente mo, no, okay, may COVID ka, it's a viral, binibigyan kita ng ganitong antibiotic, then you have to tell them the reason why you give it, no?
Right.
So yun yung that's exactly what it is.
But would you say the FDA allowed the CPR, the Certificate of Product Registration of this pharmaceutical company, in order to kill the market of these suspicious ivermectin products? In a way, FDA, sorry DG, napilitan na ho ba kayong payagan ito para matanggal yung mga hindi kayo siguradong nabibenta sa merkado?
Well, hindi naman. Unang-una, nag-apply naman talaga. No? Nag-apply naman talaga siya ng produkto na pwedeng irehistro. In-apply naman niya dun sa alam natin na talagang na positive effect ng gamot na ito. Tapos pinakita naman nila yung kanilang manufacturing practice na good quality and the source of the ivermectin is really human grade. No? So, pag naman merong nag-apply tapos pumasa naman, hindi naman natin pwedeng sabihin na hindi natin yung bibigyan. Walang dahilan para hindi natin i-register. Of course, that would be a positive effect, side effect. If we have a registered product that is of known quality and kaya nating i-trace, then I hope that would be a good side effect na mawala na yung mga smuggled, mawala na yung mga questionable na hindi natin alam kung saan nanggagaling. Especially na tinigil na po sana yung mga tao, some of them taking veterinary products. Kasi yun din yung nakakatakot, baka yung repack na veterinary products ibibigay sa tao. And we hope that at least this would disappear.
So, who will be liable? Sabihin po natin magkaroon ng adverse effect because this will be available commercially soon.
Well, the manufacturer, this is a monitored release, since it's the first time that this product has been registered with the FDA for like many, many decades. This is an initial product registration and what we call a monitored release product. So meaning we are really watching out for adverse events. And in fact, kapag po kayong bumili nito at gumamit ng gamot na ito at meron kayong naramdaman, kailangan po i-report nyo agad sa FDA.
But here's the thing, sir. If someone were to take it legally, nagkaroon po siya ng valid prescription, binili po niya sa butika, nagkaroon po siya ng adverse effect, how could the pharmaceutical company be liable when it's very clear that dapat gamitin po ito for worms, pero ginamit po para sa iba, para sa COVID?
Yeah, well, halo-halo, everybody will be responsible. The doctor who prescribes it off-label, of course, has a responsibility. If the problem is product quality, doon nagiging responsibilidad yan ng manufacturer. Kasi kapag nireklamo ang gamot na meron kang naramdaman na side effect, ang unang ginagawa ng FDA is i-check kung anong batch number, lot number, tapos magkakaroon tayo ngayon ng sampling. at i-collectahin natin yung batch na yan, isa-stop natin from distributing, and then we test it. So yung sa manufacturer, it's really the quality that they have to guarantee. No?
Right.
Ayun yung clinical effect, that's of course between the doctor and the patient.
Okay, we need to take a very short break. The Health Department seeks emergency use approval for the Chinese vaccine Sinopharm. FDA Chief Eric Domingo tells us more after the break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, FDA Chief Eric Domingo. Sir, I still have a few questions on ivermectin. Yung po nangyari in Quezon City, Congressman Mike Defensor, Congressman Marcoleta, there were reports, of course, that have come out na yung nabigay na mga prescription was supposed to be, well, seen as invalid prescriptions. Is there an investigation underway? And if so, who is on top of this?
Yeah, well, for the prescriptions, I believe the DOH has already filed a complaint against the PRC. And on the part of the products that were dispensed, our regulatory enforcement unit naman is checking kung saan nanggaling yung ivermectin, kung talaga ba compounded yun, if it was compounded properly, or kung hindi siya, kung pre-manufactured siya. So there are investigations going on in this on both sides.
Do you know who compounded it?
Yeah, because there was this pharmacy right there claiming na sila yung nag-compound nung ivermectin na pinamigay. So our enforcement unit is checking their records on the compounding.
And would you know if would you know or have you heard of that particular pharmacy in the past?
Yes, it is a licensed pharmacy. No? It's a licensed pharmacy with a permit to do compounding. So what we're just checking is to make sure that the number of tablets or capsules that were dispensed were actually the ones that were compounded, and if they were compounded following our standards.
Okay, as a last question on ivermectin, you said that if there are any adverse effects, the doctors or the manufacturer, rather, you said, could be held liable. Could. But I want to throw the question back to the FDA. Can't the FDA also be held liable? Again, going back to my previous point that you said that in decades, nobody has applied for this anti-parasitic human-grade drug. And then all of a sudden, the FDA approves this, knowing, I'm sure, sir, no, hindi naman mahirap tanggalin na gagamitin po ito para sa COVID-19.
Well, we approved it as an anti-parasitic drug. No? Of course, beyond that, the doctor will take responsibility if they prescribe it for something else, for off-label use. The manufacturer is also liable to us. I mean, has the responsibility to FDA to assure the quality of the product, and that's what we also monitor and that's what we regulate. No? So, nakita naman po natin na talagang pumasa naman siya. Of course, but kailangan ma-assure lang nila na tuloy-tuloy yun. So, that's the part of the FDA in this, to make sure that there are quality products that are out there, that they are safe, and of course, especially when used properly for the indications that they are approved for.
So to end that, it's supposed to be a quality product that the FDA approved for use for worms. All right, let's go to remdesivir, sir. Just very quickly, I want to get your thoughts on this because two lawmakers are actually questioning the purchase of, they say, 1 billion pesos worth of remdesivir, even if the WHO says that there's really no proof that this works for the treatment of COVID-19. So in my research, I saw that there are about 50 hospitals, sir, using this under the compassionate permit use. So tell us the stand here. The FDA grants permission to 50 hospitals, and yet in many instances in the past, we've used the WHO as our benchmark for certain products, or we use them as sources na pwedeng gamitin ito o hindi pwedeng gamitin ito. How can you reconcile the two, sir?
Yeah. So remdesivir is not an approved product of the FDA. No? So it's not approved in the Philippines. It's not registered. it's not approved for COVID-19 treatment also in the Philippines. However, if you have products that are under investigation, I mean investigational products for COVID-19, allowable yan na gamitin dito sa atin under compassionate special permit. So humihingi sa atin ng permit ang isang doktor at ospital na mag-import ng gamot na hindi registered dito sa Pilipinas. Gagamitin nila sa pasyente nila, of course, after fully explaining to the patient what the drug is and then what the possible effects are, and of course disclosing that this is not a registered drug in the Philippines. So the FDA gives compassionate special permit for drugs like remdesivir, ivermectin has also been given compassionate special permit in several hospitals, yung mga leronlimab. So these are products that are not registered. So hindi sila approved ng FDA, no? Only based on the request of the doctor and the hospital do we allow it to be imported for that particular use.
Oo, ito yung, as you mentioned, ito nga po yung tinatawag na compassionate special permit. So then the two congressmen are saying, Congressman Atienza and Congressman Defensor were saying, this is actually a waste of money. And the further purchase rather of this remdesivir might be deemed, they say, as a transaction, highly detrimental to the government under the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. So the reason I'm asking you this, syempre sa DOH na rin po naman ito. Pero I guess in simple terms, sir, lusot ho na gamitin ito ng 50 hospitals, just for clarification, because they have the compassionate special permit coming from the FDA.
Yes. Humingi sila, no? So yung mga doctors prescribe it to their patients and then they ask for a compassionate special permit. So that gives them the authority to import a product that is not registered here. And then they procure it, yes.
Okay, just one last point here. Ang sabi po ni Congressman Atienza, I remember he said that why spend for a very expensive, sabi po niya, drug and not that why spend for an expensive drug such as remdesivir and not a cheaper drug such as ivermectin?
Well, I guess that's really the call of the physician. No? It's the doctors who prescribe it to their patients. No, hindi naman. This is an individual physician and patient relationship and decision. So I believe when the doctors naman make these decisions, they ask their patients at kung anong mapagkasunduan nila na gamot na susubukan sa kanya, then they ask for a permit to import this medicine that is unregistered here. So I think it's really more of a doctor and a clinical decision that is made by the doctors. That's why they that drug.
DG, I know you talked about this last night, yung po sa Sinopharm with the president, and I wanted to find out why, number one, has the DOH applied for an emergency use authorization of Sinopharm here in the Philippines?
They said they will. No? I was told yesterday, Monday, that they will apply for an emergency use authorization, which is fine. This is allowed because the government can buy government to government, no? And DOH has a license to operate as a drug importer. So if the Philippine government will decide to buy the vaccine from the Chinese government, then the DOH can apply for an EUA for it.
But nangyari ho ba yon sa lahat ng na-approve ng FDA na mga vaccines, which are, I would assume, around 7? Did the DOH be the one responsible for filing an emergency use authorization, or is this going to be the first time?
Well, all of the first 7 were applied for the private sector, except for the ones that we got from the COVAX facility. So yung AstraZeneca vaccines that are coming from the WHO, these are not brought in by AstraZeneca Philippines. These are brought in by the DOH, and the DOH has applied for emergency use authorization for this, being the importer of the AstraZeneca vaccines.
So it was the DOH who applied para makapasok po yung AstraZeneca dito. Ganun din ho ba for Pfizer? Because galing din po yun sa COVAX facility.
Yes, so yung Pfizer din. So actually, yung unang nag-apply, yung private company, kasi papasok nila dito yan, no? Kaya lang nagkataon na naunang dumating yung AstraZeneca at Pfizer coming from COVAX, coming from
Yes.
WHO, hindi galing directly sa company. So for the DOH to be able to bring it in, they filed an EUA for both the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccines that they will be importing to COVAX.
Okay, let's talk about just the timeline in the event that mag-apply na po yung DOH for the EUA of Sinopharm. How long do you think it will take? Because meron na po siyang emergency use listing sa WHO, sir.
So the good thing is when you have an emergency use listing, we're able to access the documents from WHO, including their inspection reports and their evaluation and all the scientific data. So usually, pag meron tayong stringent regulatory authority or WHO EUL na listing, it takes us a little faster, maybe 14, maybe 2 weeks to go through it. Of course, we're just going to send pa to the experts muna today.
And there's another vaccine. We talked about this before, Novavax. And I remember during my interview, this was supposed to arrive, even Secretary Galvez was saying third quarter of this year. But just 2 questions on this, sir. Wala pa ho ba silang emergency use application, itong Novavax? And second, are you looking at a possible, siguro, delay dito po sa, well, I know kay Secretary Galvez to, no? But because doon sa nangyayari sa India, of course, Novavax is American developed but manufactured in India.
Yeah, well, first, Novavax has no EUA yet anywhere in the world, no? So mag-a-apply pa lang siya sa US. Requirement kasi rin natin yon bago maka-apply ng EUA sa atin. Kailangan meron na siyang EUA at least in the home country where it was developed, no? In the case of Novavax, it might be applying, I think, in both in US and in India. So once they get the EUA there, then they can apply with us. That will be hopefully siguro by next month. But yes, we are experiencing. There's a possibility na syempre baka mag-slow down nga yung delivery kasi talagang India is also trying to hold some of the vaccines within their territory to sure they vaccinate their countrymen first. But I think the outlook the baka third quarter, I think that it's something achievable at this time.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.